SCHNIEL has just been revealed, and I actually think he looks pretty interesting, specifically because they kind of said no more BS. We're going to hard counter Death Dealer Ray. And that's what you'd think this character does, but I have a few concerns with him specifically. Without further ado though, let's get into SCHNIEL. The first thing you have to know about this character is that, well, he's got a decent set of substats. He's got 117 base speed, which is okay. His self-imprint is HP percent and his team-wide is attack percent. He does have 30 ER base and his HP is okay alongside some decent defense, but as you'll see in a moment, there's some things to consider specifically for this character. Now, again, his base stats are okay, and as you read his first skill 2, what it says is that it increases his max HP by 10%, and it now has a 2-turn cooldown where after an enemy uses a skill, when an ally is afflicted with or inflicted with poison or venom, you dispel all debuffs from the caster and activate Cleanse. Cleanse dispels all debuffs from all allies, not just one debuff, by the way, similar to or unlike what Dragon King Sharoon does, and it also gives an immunity to all allies before resetting the skill cooldowns of the caster. Now, the cooldown resetting thing is pretty cool, but this blow for blow is supposed to be a, not an abusable, you can kill Dragon King Sharoon before she gets the, before she wakes everyone up kind of ability. This is supposed to be, okay, this is the end all be all. If you're going to actually apply poison or venom to the team, boom, you're dead. Like, that's just it. This is pretty good, to be honest, because Death Dealer Ray is one of the most insane characters in the game, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar. But let's talk about his skill 3. His skill 3 actually looks pretty good. Now, this skill reads that what you do is you attack all enemies and you increase the defense of all your allies for 2 turns before increasing your own combat readiness by 50% after upgrades. Now, this also is attached to a fixed damage attack, which is pretty nice, but also it reads that it increases the fixed damage by 4,000 every time the skill is used, stacking up to 2 times. Now, again, it shouldn't be that difficult to, unironically, of course, get this to max stacks, considering characters like Death Dealer Ray apply Venom several times. And again, if you're able to use his S3 first, or if SCHNIEL's able to use his S3, and then, whatever, this S2 is able to reapply or a cleanse comes off and you're able to reset the cooldowns of the caster, well, obviously you're going to be doing a healthy chunk of damage here with the S3. It's 8,000 damage. Now, okay, I know what you're thinking. 8,000 damage, defense buff, and all these things sound really crazy. What's the Soulburn? Now, the Soulburn is a little bit, it's a little bit more tame. It's a dispel debuff from all allies, which is okay, to be honest. It does kind of help in case you enter, or in case you ever end up just using someone like SCHNIEL in a fight after the Death Dealer Ray or after the Venom target has already died. I do like this and it's kind of nice, but here's a couple things to consider when it comes to SCHNIEL. Number 1, he is 117 base speed, which is pretty good, but he also has a lot of good stats. Now, based on the kit that we just saw here, he is obviously clearly designed to counter, Death Dealer Ray. He, I would say, does it pretty good, of course, because there's no real manipulation of this, but the thing that kind of, sets Death Dealer Ray to be such a strong and difficult character to fight against at times is how annoying or how likely they are to get countered by other characters. Now, again, if we take a look back at SCHNIEL's kit real quick, he's 117 base speed, which is okay, but as we saw through the rest of his kit, he is primarily focused on countering specifically Venom and Poison. Now, the reason why this is pretty significant, or the reason why I'm bringing this up, is because, well, SCHNIEL doesn't just have to only care about or deal with a character like Death Dealer Ray. You also have to consider the other characters that exist in the game. And if you are considering characters like maybe Knockwall, or if you're considering the current state of, well, Arena and Guild War and any other kind of content right now, SCHNIEL is probably going to get one shot by someone like Harsetti. SCHNIEL is probably getting stunned by Harsetti, in fact. And it doesn't really matter if he's able to, of course, you know, press any of these buttons or cleanse. If the next turn that comes around, he's able to, or rather, he gets stripped or gets, you know, debuffed by someone like Harsetti after. Now, of course, this is prevented or is slightly less likely with something like immunity, but as I'm sure you guys all know, one set of immunity is not always enough to stop you from either dying to someone like Afternoon Soak Flan, or even prevent you from fighting characters like Knockwall, even the Rands, or, you know, New Moon Luna, any character you want to think of. You have to kind of consider when you're picking this SCHNIEL character. Now, I do want to mention before I go a little too off the deep end that, of course, what I'm describing is a little bit more focused towards the faster speed end. So let's talk about his viability, or how I feel about him as a slow character. The answer is he looks pretty cool. Obviously, if you have a fight where someone is picking Harsetti, and you know that there's going to be a very, very slow Death Dealer Ray, as we saw from a few, you know, notes from the character here. Even though this Death Dealer Ray has roughly 18,000 HP, the SCHNIEL, if I can find him. Okay, you can't really see it, but that says 23,000. He has 23,000 HP, and again, this isn't even. Oh, sorry, rather. I apologize for that. This isn't even necessarily used on a slow Harsetti team. This is debatably, you know, a character that could actually have more than 23,000 HP if you decide to build in base speed. So in terms of base speed, or in terms of, you know, being viable for maybe arena, or for tuning him specifically for, well, Harsetti based teams or combat, well, this could be a decent character, and I could definitely see the viability and how powerful he can be in slow compositions. Although, again, the real saving grace, I think, of him as a turn 2 player is that he gives defense buff, and he also does 8,000 fixed damage if there's a character that venoms or poisons. Otherwise, though, his S3 is kind of, it's okay. It gives you a defense buff, but a defense buff against turn 2 players that, well, most of the time have, I don't know, like defense pen, or they have something like that, doesn't really mean much. But the final thing we need to talk about here is the artifact. Now, homage to Tarman is, well, it's okay. And what it reads is that after an ally is attacked, when the damage suffered is equivalent to 25% or more of max HP, you grant a barrier to the target for 2 turns, and the barrier strength is equivalent to 20% of the caster's max HP, activatable only once per turn. Now, this is very, very interesting because, of course, you could use this on SCHNIEL, but SCHNIEL may end up wanting to use something like, I don't know, Ice Guardian Crystal, since it's the most OP artifact for, you know, Soul Weavers, or you could basically use any combination of maybe Celestine if you want to run SCHNIEL as a counter character, or you name it, Wondrous Potion Vial, Water's Origin to kind of throw people off. There's a lot of options here for Soul Weavers, but this artifact is pretty interesting. Number one, because again, there is a lot of damage or outgoing damage right now, and 25% or more of max HP dealt to a target is not that much damage. Like most characters nowadays, if you're doing something really goofy, like, I don't know, salvoing on a candy, or even if you're, you know, you're encountering a bride Senya who uses her S3, you're going to be doing more than 25,000 HP, or 25% of max HP, and the barrier being granted by this is pretty interesting. Now, I do want to say that recently I've seen Rise of a Monarch actually being, or growing in popularity, or being used specifically on Ilanov, because a lot of people will pair someone like Ilanov with an evasion character like maybe Afternoon Soak Flan, and the barrier and the cycling and the overall team defense is pretty nice. And this, I would say, feels a little bit more awkward. Number one, because, well, it's not a limited artifact, so it's not like some barrier doesn't come up if you don't have it at max. And so therefore, what you're actually pulling for when it comes to this artifact, or this artifact, is primarily used for the barrier, and, well, an every turn barrier is pretty good. It's kind of similar to things like Bastion of Perlucia, or not Bastion of Perlucia, but, you know, the Rise of a Monarch, or any barrier that is given to an ally on your team. But in terms of whether it's actually more valuable for you to be given a barrier as opposed to, well, healing more consistently, it's tough to say. But I will say that based on our experience from characters like, well, Adventurer Roz, or even Bride Senya, you can't underestimate the value of a barrier, period. 20% of a caster's or of the caster's max HP on a Harsetti team every single turn when an ally is attacked for more than 25% of their max HP. Well, that kind of insinuates that, well, you can start getting something like a 4 to maybe 5,000, maybe 6,000 HP shield. But I do want to remind you that although I just said that Rise of a Monarch is very popular and, usable with someone like Afternoon Soak Flan currently, many players are currently using that because Rise of a Monarch will unequivocally at the end of every turn give it to Afternoon Soak Flan, assuming that she's not unbuffable. This is a little bit different because you have to suffer 25% or more of your max HP to do this, and for a character that has 100% evasion, this might not actually happen. Now, okay, I do want to say though, this of course also has weird targeting because it's not just the target themselves that takes 25% damage, it's any target or the highest DPS target, it's any target. So this can be given to tanks, to other healers, to utility characters, etc., which is cool, but at the end of the day, I think we'll have to stay and see exactly how good, or we're gonna have to see how good this artifact is. But I now want to broaden our horizons. I already talked a little bit about SCHNIEL, and now let's talk about, well, his artifact and overall, my thoughts on this character, and apologize for keep hitting the mic. In truth, this is, as far as I can tell, not a limited character. And yes, this means less money, and of course, this also means you can get this character from the Covenant banner, at least from what I understand, unless if I'm missing something from what they've described. But the truth is that Death Dealer Ray is extremely powerful. If you guys have fought against him, he's very annoying to deal with. One of the best ways to deal with a character like Death Dealer Ray and historically has been someone like Laya, but as with Galililius, as with the advent of Ilanov and other characters, it's been a little bit more difficult for people to as easily or as readily counter Death Dealer Ray without encountering his other counters. Another thing, again, that I really have to harp on is that although it sounds really terrible to always cater to or consider or have to consider fast players in mind, the truth is that you could always get cleaved, right? And if you're always prone to getting cleaved, you have to think about what exactly it is this character or any character that you're picking, or how these characters will fare into the future, whatever future potential lineup you're fighting against. Again, I could definitely see a character like this immediately getting sealed up or, countered by someone like Knockwall, which, to be fair, is something that a lot of characters suffer from. But in my mind, that would basically make SCHNIEL somewhat of a 4-5 character with a maybe more pronounced or more consistent role than someone like Dragon King Sharoon in, well, basically countering, the poisons. Now, I do also want to say that, to his credit, SCHNIEL is not as easily, or at least from what I could tell, not as easily manipulated the same way that a character like Dragon King Sharoon can be. Formerly in the past, I've seen people that have tried to stop Dragon King Sharoon or stop Death Dealer Ray with Dragon King Sharoon, and, what they'll end up doing sometimes is they'll just kill the Dragon King Sharoon. Now, of course, you could argue that you could maybe do something similar with SCHNIEL. You could just kill the SCHNIEL before it happens, but he's got a lot of HP. He gives him defense and gives himself defense buff, and he doesn't even have to take a turn in order to do his S2 passive. He just does it. But as with every good character, and if you didn't catch it actually when he does his S2 here, he actually casts this reactionary when the enemy uses a skill, and, well, it's a non-attack skill. And because this is actually the case, and funnily enough, some people try to use a character like Celine to counter Death Dealer Ray, but now with SCHNIEL, technically speaking, if you have some scenario where you can kill maybe another target, or maybe if you have someone like Celine on your team and you want to punish the non-attack skill, funnily enough, you could take Death Dealer Ray and then Celine and kind of counter the SCHNIEL, but of course, that's a little bit too specific. But I just thought it was kind of interesting because, the go-to answer for some players for a long time was, oh, you see Celine? Or you see Death Dealer Ray? Okay, pick Celine and then counter it. But now you could go the other way. It's like, you pick Death Dealer Ray? Oh, and they pick SCHNIEL? Well, now you pick Celine. Like, kind of funny. But in any case, as you're seeing on here, you know, the characters here are obviously AI and they're not really doing anything crazy. They're just auto controlling into, you know, the SCHNIEL team. And the SCHNIEL team is basically Exodia. I mean, my God, it has, you know, it has Mort. It has Mort and Afternoon Soak Flan. Basically anything you could pick with those two characters will result in a win. But again, just in terms of pull value, he's a Covenant character, so it's a little bit difficult for me to justify recommending pulling for him. But I also think at the same time, he looks cool. It's the first character that they've kind of just gone out of their way, albeit a little bit uncreatively, to just hammer in and just say, no more. No more poison. No more debuffs. Death Dealer Ray, if you do this, like, eat poop and die. Like, that's kind of what they're trying to do with this. And again, I can't say that I necessarily disagree with them because, well, Death Dealer Ray is really, really strong. But again, as I'm sure a lot of you guys will also feel as well, it's a new limited character. Is it really going to be worth it to do this? Or it's a new non-limited character. Is it really going to be worth it to pull for them? A little difficult to say. However, again, if you're struggling with Death Dealer Ray, I think he might be powerful. I could definitely imagine him actually being good in Guild Wars specifically against, you know, Death Dealer Ray. But as a final cautionary disclaimer, I will say that as with a lot of Harsetti teams right now, if you are playing Arena, again, I know a lot of you guys may not care about Arena, but for whatever reason, if you're ever fighting someone like Harsetti, and she's the most prominent in Arena right now, and you're trying to take someone like SCHNIEL into Death Dealer Ray, keep in mind, again, that if you're trying to tune your skills, or if you're trying to tune your team so that, you know, everything happens before or after the Death Dealer Ray takes a turn, Harsetti randomizes your speed tuning, right? So just keep that in mind, because I've definitely taken my fair share of like, oh, great, Dragon King Shroon's gonna, you know, is gonna go right after the Death Dealer Ray presses his S3, and then I realize my Shroon goes first. In any case, though, SCHNIEL doesn't need to care too much about that because, well, his S2 passive goes off anytime that, you know, what is it? It's specifically anytime that after an enemy uses a skill when an ally is afflicted, you know, with the poisons, this will activate. But as always, guys, hope you guys enjoyed today's first impressions. I think he looks pretty cool. I know a lot of people have been waiting for SCHNIEL. I think he's like a really old character, and I'm curious what you guys feel, or how you guys feel about this character. Feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I think he's really cool. I appreciate them going out of, or Smilegate specifically going out of their way to actually try to create a counter for Death Dealer Ray. Whether this will actually be the case, though, it's a little bit hard to say right now, because I don't really see him doing anything to stop himself from, well, getting killed by someone like New Moon Luna or any of the debuffers, even ML Politis. So it is what it is. But thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you all next time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Check out the rest of my socials. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell if you enjoyed today's content. Good night.